All right, we're back, and it's COMP1002, Web and Internet Fundamentals, and it's Week 8, Lesson 8, Part 2. Okay, so last we left off with our brave adventurers. Sorry, I'm not playing D&D. I'm teaching this class today, right? Sorry, the guys at the corner are making me jealous because they're going to play D&D later on, and it's just I'm jonesing to role play, right? It's really bad. D&D, man. Yeah, I'm an old guy. All right, so we're doing this thing with HTML5 and CSS3, and we're going into details on some kind of styling that we're going to be doing for our text, and we're going to kind of get into the rest of the stuff that I want to talk about. So we talked about bold formatting. We can also use, this is kind of interesting, font weight. Font weight is not just bold, but we can also specify an amount of a multiple of in hundreds between a 100 and 900. And if you notice, that's another way of making it more bold, right? So that's really more control. So you can kind of say how much bold is bold, right? As opposed to just saying bold. If I want to also cancel, notice how it says I want to apply a bold style, but I also want to remove it. Anything that I want to remove, I can always go back to normal, right? So if I want to go back to our code here, and an example of this would be our font style is italic and bold, but I want to have another class that conflicts with this class. Let's make one, right? So I want to say our first word, but we're going to say we're going to apply a class of normal, right? We have to make a new class. We're going to call normal. And the class normal is going to say our font weight, right? It's just going to hit our font weight, and we're going to make it normal, right? Let's just do that. So font weight normal. We're going to add font style normal in a second too. Let's see how that works. And I want to apply this class to the span tags. So I'm going to say not only just this. How do I apply multiple classes to the span tag? How do I say I want to have a first word class, and I want to have my normal class? How do I do that? Let's just review, right? For some people who don't know. I know there's some people out there who have problems. Come on, give me the answer. It's very simple. Tell me what to do. I want to apply another class to my span tags, right? So right now I only have the class first word. I want to apply a class of normal to this span tag as well. How do I do that? I want to have two classes, not just one, applied to the same tag. Well, I just put it in here. I say span class is equal to first word, and I do a space, and I put a normal in there as well, right? Because I can add as many classes as I want inside my quotation marks, and all classes that I add in there are going to be applied to my span tag. So what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? I've got my first word, right, which is italic and bold, and my color blue. And then I have normal, which is my font weight is normal. So it's kind of conflicting. I've got my font weight here, and I got my font weight here. What's going to happen? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Who's the other person? Is there anyone out there that says it's going to still be bold and italic? Anyone disagree with that one? So people say that it might still be bold and italic. First word is applied first, and then you're thinking that normal is applied second, right? Okay, let's see if that works. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go back here and to our little page that we've got going on. And again, I got bold and italic, but I applied normal, and let's see what happens. So my bold goes away. Okay, let's change the order, right, and see what happens then. Okay, so I'm going to go back to here, and instead of first word and normal, I go normal and first word. Right? Let's see if that changes anything. If I apply my classes in different order. I'm going to leave this one the same, first word normal, and this one is normal first word to see the difference. Right? I know we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, but you need to understand what's going on. When you see classes and how they work, right? People still don't get it when we do CSS, how things go, and they get confused. Okay, so let's try this out. So I'm going to go back here and refresh. It's the same. How come? How come it's the same? Yeah.
Normal is after first word.
Okay, hold on. So I put it here, you mean? So I mean, if I move this around, that's important, not this. Okay, let's try that out. So let's move this. I'll take this out of here and put it over here. Okay, so now you're thinking that now it's going to be italic and bold, right? Huh? Okay, let's see. See if you're right. So order doesn't matter inside our document in here, right? That doesn't matter. When you say, I want to apply a couple classes or 10 classes in here, the order in which you apply the classes has no bearing on the format, right? It's just saying apply all of these classes to this particular tag, span, div, whatever I'm targeting, whatever my selector is, right? All these classes, right? But the order here inside of my document really does matter. It reads the document in order. The browser, basically what it does is it interprets each of our documents in line order. So it goes, okay, I want to read line 50. Okay, it's a normal. Okay, I'm applying this style to it, closing off this one. Okay, now I'm doing this one. Okay, first word, I'm applying this stuff now. And it does it in order like that, right? So that works the same way with conflicting files. If I have one file, right, here's the first CSS file, and then I apply another one underneath it, the next CSS file takes precedent over the first one. The last style, remember it goes back to that style thing, the last style typically takes precedent. How about if I do this though? So I say font weight normal, right, and then it's bold, but you know what? I want to make sure that it's important, right? So I kind of put in like the important things, like by important. Let's see if I put that in there. Remember what does important do? Should take a priority. Let's see what it does. So that means I want to make my font weight, regardless, when I put normal in there, it wipes out my font weight. Let's see if it does that. So I'm going to go back and refresh, and then it does that, right? So it takes away my font weight, regardless of the order, right, in this particular case. Okay, but what if I do both now? What if I put my font weight is bold, like this? So here's some conflicts, right? So my font weight is bold. Oops. Follows the order is what you're saying, right? So that'll make it bold again, right? So let's go back in here and refresh. Now it's bold, right? So again, those are the rules. The rules are it follows the order first, right? Unless you have an important tag. Important tag is like, it's a cheat, right? We don't want to use important unless we absolutely have to, like to solve a problem, right, that we're having in our style, right? And if there's two important tags to target the same rule, right, the same property, then it's in order. So basically, both of these are being affected, right? But this one's happening after this one, so this one's taking precedent. Order of precedence. Okay, to try and understand how that works. Okay, cool. So that's this. Let's take away these importance and all this kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool, right? If I want to normalize stuff, I can use kind of this normal, this normal CSS. Right? Okay. What about if I say this? Any style, listen to my words and tell me how I'm going to write the selector. I want my selector's got to be like this. I have to have both the normal class and the first word class applied to it. I want to make another style. How do I write that down here? I want both the normal class and I want to target elements that have both the normal class and the first word class applied to them. How do I do that? How do I write that in? Yeah.
Would you do just dot normal and space and dot first word?
Close. Anyone else have a solution? What about you guys in this table? You guys are very quiet. So I want to kind of put both things. So I want to put the normal and the first word. I want to target all tags that have both normal and first word classes applied to them. How do I write that in my CSS? How about you guys? No, that pound thing is the ID, right? So I'm not doing that. How do I do it? I want to put both stuff. I want to target both things on my in my CSS. How do I write that? Yeah.
Just dot normal and then first word.
Let's see if I do this. So there's a couple ways I can do this. I can do spaces. So if I go first word and normal, right? That's both things that apply to one style. There's this way, right? What if I do this? First word, comma normal, right? What does this do? How are both those styles different? What is this doing? Yeah.
The first one is looking for a normal child to the first parent, Well, the second one is first word normal is looking for either one.
You got the second one right. The first one is both of them, both styles, and they're more like ands. So I want both. I want styles that have first word and normal applied to them, because they're not children or they're not tags I'm targeting. Tags have a child-parent relationship, but not classes. Classes don't have a child-parent relationship. They're not related to each other, right? So it's one and the other one. So I want to say if both these two classes are affected on a tag, then I want to give it a certain style. Let's, for example, say any tag that has both the first word and normal classes applied to them are going to have a line height of 1.5, just to make it more dramatic, right? So let's take a look and see what the effect that has. So both of these are the case, right? So both of them should have a line height of 1.5. Oops. Let's go back to this, what I really wanted, refresh. Oh my God, what happened? And nothing happened. How come my line height didn't get affected here? Right? I don't understand. Did I not save? Right? Hold on. I saved. And then, but I want to put a line height on any item, any element that has both first word and normal applied to them, which I do right here. Okay, let's try that again by doing this, by kind of putting this one in here and see if that works. Is there first word, either one, first word or normal, that's what the comma means here, first word or normal, right? Both of those two things should have line height, right? Let's try this out. So I'm going to go refresh. That kind of worked. So either one, but one that has both applied to it, somehow that didn't work. Let's go back and try that out again. So why didn't this one work? Normal and first word, right? And this one did work, first word and normal, right? So this one is either one. This one is have to have both to have this happen. I have both, normal and first word and normal.
Sequencing?
No, it's there's a couple of things. Let's take this one away for a second to show you. So I'm going to take this one away, and we'll go back to this standard one for a second, and then go back to this, right? So I'm refresh. It kind of collapses again. It's really weird how classes combine, right? In CSS, and this is one of the most confusing pieces to students, right, when they first learn, right? In this particular case, when I go to this, what I'm saying is both classes are being applied. I want to have a case where both this and this are happening, and I expect, like we normally see with other elements, that this is what's going to happen. But this has no meaning, unfortunately, for CSS whatsoever. Combining two classes like this, right? But what about this? When I do that, first word dot normal. Think about our when we did our emit. When we read emit, and I want to apply two classes to emit, right? When I use emit here, like when I use it on HTML. Here's a good example of this. I have a paragraph tag where I want to have my first class is first word, right? And my second class is normal, right? I want to use the paragraph tag, and if I press tab, I get first word normal. See that emit notation, which is, this. Now let's see if it works, right? So I'm going to get rid of this for a second. So it's just a test to show you emit, right? Let's see what it does when I put it in this way. Does it work like this? And refresh, and hold on, did I save? I did not. Refresh, and now you see the line spacing happening. So when I want to apply two classes, to a style that has both classes applied, an element with a style that has of these, both classes applied to it. I need to put the dots together like this, right? So there isn't a comma or spacing. It's like this. If I want to press either one or the other, I use a comma separator, right? So that's the way I can do these. Okay, here's one. I want to be more specific. I want to have any span element, hear me out, any span element that has a class of first word and normal applied to it. How do I target that? How do I change the selector to do that? Any span element that has a class of first word and normal applied to it. Where do I put it? In front or behind? Behind. span, remember, you read it right to left, right? Any span element that has a class of first word and normal applied to it, right? So that's the same thing. And let me just do the same thing. So I say any span element that has a first word, class of first word and normal. And let's make another one. We'll make another kind of tag, another paragraph tag just hanging out here, right? And we'll do the same thing. Paragraph tag with first word and normal applied to it, right? And we'll kind of put in some example text in there, right? And I got first word and normal here, and you know what? I want to kind of put this first word and normal stuff as well, right? So let's just make it so that anything I'm targeting here, any span has this 1.5 line height, but you know what? Anytime that it's anything else, first word and normal, right? Anything it's just first word and normal applied to it, I want to have a line height, just to make it really dramatic, a line height of 2 ems, right? So let's see how that works. And I'll get rid of this for a second. All right, so I want to say any span that has a class of first word and normal, and this one is any tag that has a class of first word and normal, right? Okay, now look at the order that I'm doing it in again. All right, so let's see what the line height is. So fresh. Okay, notice how it's line spacing of 2 for here. You can't tell here because my example text is on its own, right? So how do I see this stuff if I was going to check in the browser? I can right-click here and go inspect element, right? And if I inspect element in the browser, it shows me a couple of things here, right? On the right, if you notice, it tells me my styles that are applied to it, right? For example, on my text, on this text element that I'm highlighting here, it shows me that I have first word normal, and then first word, and then normal. And see how normal wipes out my style, but it's crossed out. See how these are crossed out like this? This tells you that the normal style has been overwritten by the stuff that comes before it here, right? So these normal style and the default paragraph style are gone, right? And these are the ones that are inherited from the body. The line height has been wiped out because of the changes that I'm making to my first word and normal. I'm using my line height of 2, right? That's what's taking precedence. So if you notice the order here, my line height of 2 is the one that's being affected because of the order that I have these in. First word normal, and then only ones that have my line height. They're both the same. I'm targeting the same things, right? But one is I'm only targeting spans, and the other one is targeting everything, right? Why am I teaching you this stuff? Why am I talking about compound styles? Because as we get closer to doing more complex styling, you can apply more than one class to a style and be clever about doing it, right? Like an example is if I want something to have a border, right? I want to have a border around something, right? We're going to talk about borders and margins now a little bit. How does this work? So let's say, for example, I want to make a style. Let's get rid of this one, first word and normal span. That doesn't make any sense anyway, right? And even this first word, both have first word and normal together. We'll get rid of that. Here's normal and here's first word, and we're going to, kind of make it so that it's normalized. But whenever I apply it, I want to really make this class work, this normal class. I want to say whenever I use a normal class, I want to say my font style, not style, style. Arg. My font style, not stretch, Jesus, Tom, is equal to normal as well. I want to normalize that, and I also want to go with my line height. I want to really normalize everything. Line height of 1em. Right, so I want to kind of really specify that, and I want them all to be important. So whenever I apply a norm, I normalize my stuff with this thing. So I say important, right? And that's a good use of important because what I'm saying is I want to apply a style when I'm coding, so that I normalize what's going on here. I want to make sure that style has a line height of 1 and everything else, right? So I want to normalize my stuff, right? If I do this for a second, let me just go back here. And if I go back to my Chrome, and again I'm going to refresh and cancel this thing, and refresh, you can notice that everything's back to normal again, and I'm applying both line height of 1 and my text, even though my color is there, right? How do I choose my color back to normal? Can I specify a color as normal? Really. If I go back to, or a default color, if you will, I can't really do that the same way. If I was to go here and start typing color normal, right, that doesn't really compute, right? How about if I go color, what other things do I have for color? Color none. How about if I do color none? No color, right? Let's see if that works. And let's say I'll make that important, right? I found that color none thing, right? What does it do, right? I used code hinting to get that, right? All right, I saved everything and go back and refresh, and I still got my color here because color none makes no sense for CSS. We put it in, right? Because Visual Studio Code says it's possible, but none has no bearing on color, right? And instead, I may want to use something like this. If I know my default text color is black, right? Then I could do something like this: is black text, right? And I want to make it important. That will look like normal. So that's my default text, my normal, right? So I can apply a style like that. And if I refresh, now I can take away my colors. If I add a normal class to any element, it'll change it to a 1em, a line height. It'll go back to, it'll take away bold and italics. It'll normalize it. That's what makes sense, right? Okay, I want to add a border. Every time I have my border class added, I want to add a border around the element. Okay, now you've never talked about borders, but let's talk about borders for a second. How do I add a border? So first, I want to specify my class, border, right? And then I want to specify that my border has different sides to it. Think about the border that can be applied to any side of my container. My containers are all boxes. Assume, I want you to assume for a second, without making an ass of anybody, right? That the borders, every container has sides to it, like a four-sided container. They're all rectangles, all right? So if that's true, right, that means that I have a border top, right, my border top property. I can make it, we're going to specify it in pixels. So let's make it 2 pixels, right? And we have a border, right, which we're going to make 2 pixels. And we have a border bottom that we're going to make 2 pixels. And we have a border left that we're going to make 2 pixels. Okay, that's cool. But I also whenever I do borders, I also have to specify a couple of other properties, right? One is the border style. What is my border going to be? Dashed, solid, dotted? What kind of border style is it going to be? So I specified here, border dash style, right? And I can say, as an example, it's a solid bold border. And I also want to specify my border color, border dash color, right? My border color is going to be, we'll make it red, so it stands out. So what am I saying? What class did I make here? I made a class that applies borders around a container, any container that I choose to add the class to. Okay, well let's add this class to here. So now I'm going to add another class to my normal first word. I'm going to add the border class, right? Because my border class, border, should come up, right? That's something that should work. So what am I going to get here? I'm not going to get, because my normal class is applied to this thing, this span, right? I'm not going to get any italics and bold, but I will get my color that comes through, but then it gets wiped out by this one. So it's going to have regular color, right, because of my normal, right? But I'm going to get a border, I should get a border around everything that's red, if we assume things correctly. Let's see that, if that's true. So I'm going to go back here and refresh, and man, what happened? How come I'm not getting my borders happening, man? Well, I defined my class. This is my class right here, my border class. I put my border over here, right? Here, I didn't put it in. I didn't put it in here. But let's try this out. I didn't put my border in here, but I applied my border to my span. I should be able to get it. What's going on? How come? Right? Let's go back. Well, you have to know something about borders for you to understand what it does, right? And the question should always be in your mind, would my border apply to a span tag? Does that work? Sometimes I can think of all kinds of properties, but sometimes it'll work on a specific tag, and sometimes they won't. Like for example, my color property may not work on every tag or every kind of element. Just like other properties won't work, right, on every tag and every element, right? So let's try this out. I want to put my border tag around, here's something, my footer. I want to use my footer, and I want to specify a class of border on it. Let's see if it works there, right? So I've put it up here in my span, but now I want to put it on my footer, so I can apply my class multiple times. So here's my class of border, right? And I save my file, and I save this file, right? And let's see if it works now. Let's see if I've done it correctly. So I've saved this one and this one. Got to be careful, because if you don't save one or the other in my split screen view, that might cause an issue. Let's refresh. Man, it's not freaking working. How come mine's not working? Well, hold on. I'm trying it out here. I don't understand. Here's my border. I've got my border. I've got my normal. I've got my border over here. My class. It should work, right? So let me go save file just to be sure. File save all, right? That's the first thing I got to try here in VS Code, right? Because sometimes that might be the cause. And I can refresh, right? Which might be the cause as well, right? Just as a helper app, sometimes what ends up happening is, and again, what I may have to do is go here and and try and kick this file off again, because if I go back, I've modified it a bunch of times, not running it in some kind of browser. This might be the other thing that's affecting it, right? How do I get to? I want to see my index.html, right? So here I am, right? And if I go back to my files, here's my index.html. I want to see this inside of a my command in my operating system. Well, you can do that if you right-click onto it, and if you go reveal in Finder or reveal in command prompt on the Windows side, or sorry, File Explorer, then it'll bring it up, right? So it'll kind of reveal it here. There is my index.html, and then I can double-click on it, and it'll run. Now, I'm not seeing those changes, and there's a reason for it on my side. Do you see it, Keith?
Yeah. No, not yet.
Have you tried doing what I'm doing? Same
I'm
things?
trying,
How about you guys, the guys on the Mac? Are you guys seeing it?
I'm still good.
Are you on a Mac? Okay, and you're seeing it? I'm not, right? What about if I ran a little short program here? So I'm going to try this out here. If you notice, I'm in COMP1002 lesson 8, right, as an example. And I'm going to run something called HTTP server, which I installed using npm. Now, you may have not installed this thing. It's okay. So I've run my little server, and I'm going to run this thing in 8080 now. So I'm going to say localhost 8080. Let's see what that does, right? So I know I'm running now. It's on a server, so it's not a server issue, right? I'm trying to troubleshoot what my problem is, right? Like, what's my issue? How come my style isn't being applied? What did I do wrong, right? And if you've done what I've done, you should have similar results, yeah? So let's try this out. So I don't know what the problem is yet, right? I've got this happening right here. Let me just, sometimes, again, what may also be the case is that I'm running it in let's try another browser. Maybe it's the browser, because remember, I'm also running Hangouts, and I've got a bunch of stuff going on. It's a little different than you guys, right? So let's just try it in another browser. I'm going to try it in Firefox, right? So I'm going to go localhost, then localhost 8080, and try it in Firefox. Still get the same thing. So I know it's not a browser issue, and I'm trying to troubleshoot what the problem is, right? So it's not a browser issue, right? Because if it was, I would get that. What about if I go back, kill Firefox for a second. Let's go back to Chrome, and let's do an inspect element. So I want to see, I should be getting, my styles applied down here for sure on my copyright, right? So copyright, and I want to kind of do inspect element, right, to see what I get, right? So I go over here and look on the right, and I should see my stuff being applied. Well, look, I got my display block going on, right? I've got my font size as H4, my font family, but I don't see any kind of, on my footer, I don't see any borders being applied, right? So somehow my style is not getting through, right? For whatever reason. It could be an operating system thing. I'm going to close down Visual Studio Code for a second and kind of go back into, just to be sure and to be agnostic, I'm going to go back into my content folder and look at my main.css with another text editor. Like, for example, something like on the Mac side with Text Wrangler, right? See what I actually see. So there's nothing going on. So I see my border right there. It is there. It's not like I haven't put it in there, right? So that's one. So I know my style is good. So let's close this off. let's see if my index.html got updated. So I'm going to kind of go in here and then, kind of open that up with Text Wrangler. Make sure that it's not an item issue, right? So my class border, right? So I've applied my class border to my footer. I've applied my border here. Whoa, it gives me an underline, right? I wonder what that is. Why this class border is underlined. Make it border, right? Think about my words, right? And remember, it doesn't work across platforms sometimes. Okay, so maybe that's the reason that it's not happening right now. Okay, let me refresh the page and see if I'm still getting it. I'm still not seeing it over here. Well, this is one thing you can do with your Chrome browser, right? What about if I add my own styles in here? Can I add a style to my H4 tags? All H4 tags, I want to add a border. I want to have a border in here in the browser, and I want to make it so that it's 2 pixels all around, solid black, right? So I want to kind of a solid black border in here, and let's press kind of go to the next line and see if that works, right? So here's my black border, and then let's see if it applied it to the page, right? There's my black border. I can do that here, right, in my, kind of right inside my element. So I know it's not a browser issue necessarily. By the way, if you notice here on the right-hand side, when I'm inside Inspect Element in my developer tools in Chrome, I see that the size of the height and width of my page, right, which is a very useful tool to know. So I know that it's 1280. That's the width of my page right now by 400, and it keeps on going up, right? So that's why I know that style will work, right? But there's a couple things that I want to try out that maybe are the culprits here in this whole scenario, right? So let's go back to Visual Studio Code, let's bring it up, right? So nothing's really changed here. This is good. I want to move now. If you notice, my split screen has changed, which is totally okay. And I want to go back to main CSS here with my split screen. Right? So there's my main CSS, and here's my border of red that I want to apply. But let's rename this thing instead of border. As an example, let's call it something else. Let's call it red border. So we'll call it red border, and we'll use camel case for this one. So we'll say red border like this. And I want to apply this style, red border, to over here. So I want to say to here. I want to make a red border, which makes more sense. And here, and you know what? I also want to put it down here. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to save this. And I also save this, and I go back to my HTML and refresh, and let's see what I get. I get nothing. How about you guys?
Still working.
How about you guys? Is yours working with the red border? Yours is not? Yours is working. How come? How come? How come for some people it works? Doug? Sorry, Keith? Why is it not working for you still?
No.
Anyone else? Who's it working for and who's it not working for? Is yours working? No. How come it works for you? How come it works for you? Right? Are you on a Windows machine or a Mac machine? Windows. You're on a Mac, right? What browser are you using?
Chrome.
And you?
Chrome.
Visual Studio Code? Doesn't matter that way, right? Something's up. How come? How come? How come? Is this something I did wrong? Right? Let's do a couple things here to test this out. Right? Remember, I'm trying to apply a red border style, my class red border, to my stuff here, right? And I also got this normal style. Let's unapply the normal style just to make sure. We'll start taking styles away, right, in my class. So I'm going to get rid of normal, and see. I'm going to make sure that my text becomes blue again. So we get rid of my normal here, and my normal here. So it's not normalized anymore, right? And there's my red border. Notice how I have color of black for my normal, but that's okay. And I've saved everything. I've saved everything on this side as well. And I'm going back to my stuff and refreshing. And I get my blue, but no border. Okay, let's target. Here's something I want to try as well. So my CSS is taking effect, but just somehow my border style, my border color, and all this stuff, the way I've written it, not working. Let's change some of this. I'm going to show you the shorthand. Here's the shorthand for writing all this, right? Instead of writing it border style, border color, by the way, this all should work. I'm going to do this, border, specify border, and we're going to specify the first piece, which is, and by the way, I want you to think about it like a box, all right? So we always do it in a clockwise order when I do my shorthand, okay? So I want to say border top first, border right, border bottom, border left. That's how I do it. And that's the shorthand. So border top, border right, border bottom, border left. Solid. That can come anywhere. And red. That's the same as doing all those other lines. That's a shorthand, yeah. Tell me.
Is the red and solid your design? The last of all the.
And you did it, and I did it at the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so remember this is that's why I wanted to show you guys. I wanted to get in there and try and figure it out.
What was the solution?
Wait, I'll show you first. Let me show you it, right? Refresh, right? Hold on, man. How did it work? How come yours worked and mine's not working still, right? That seemed, I like your solution, but it didn't work for me. And I don't think you have that problem, right? Because you just type it my way? Yeah, right? How come I'm not getting anything in here? I don't understand, right? I'm not getting any border at all inside my stuff whatsoever. No matter what I do, no matter how I apply it, I can't get a border. It's not Chrome, because I've checked that. And it's not my files. I'm running it on a server now, so I know it's an 8080. It's not like it's running from a file. And if I stop this for a second, stop this one, and if I go back to my my operating system and just double click, which is what you guys have, right? Still brings up this, but I still don't have anything else. I don't still have any borders around this stuff at all, right? So how come? If I go do an inspect element on this, you notice that I do have. If I bring this up, I do have a, in my inspect element, I can see what styles are being affected. I have my H4 style. This is the default style that comes from my, my stuff. Plus I've added some other things in here. If you notice, my body and my line height has changed to 1.2. I've applied an H4 font size of 1.17. That's what I've applied in there, but there's nothing else. How about computed? Here's computed, something else. There's another line here. So there's styles, and there's a computed style here as well. I don't see my border being applied to it at all. It's almost like it's ignoring that class I put together. The last class I put on my CSS, which is right here, this red border class, even though it's applied. And let's look at the other thing I can look at is my HTML to see if it's actually rendering in my HTML side. So go back to my, this is other troubleshooting we can do, right? So I'm going to close this off. So instead of inspect element, I want to look at the HTML. So I'm going to right click and I want to view my page source. Well, I see my red border class applied. Here it is, red border, right? And I see my red border class applied here. Oh, there's a border class applied here. I didn't change that one, but it was applied there and here. So it should appear, right? I mean, come on. I mean, I made this class, right? So, by the way, guys, there's nothing wrong with what I'm typing in.
I still have normal on my class.
And it still works fine, right? Yeah, I just took it off just because, right? So, does anyone else offer a solution?
What if you go back to the way it was before, and instead of just putting the 2 pixels, you put like 2 pixels solid, and then 2 pixels solid, and then the color?
I could do that too, right? What if I do this? 2 pixels solid. I like that. I like your solution. Solid, and then the color, which is red, right? I like your solution. So what does this mean? What does 2 pixels mean? Just one size. Everything's the same all around. Instead of specifying specifics for each side, each of my border sides it should be the same here. That's what it means. All right. So let's see if that works for you, right? So I'm going to go back to here and refresh the screen, and oh, I got some border going on. I get some stuff happening. How come? Right? Here's something that's really weird, right? I got my border styles all being applied all of a sudden, and yet the way I wrote it before, it should have worked too, right? This is a shorthand for. Let's just make this in. Let's put this in brackets here like this. So we're gonna put it in stasis for a second. This is a shorthand for border dash top 2 pixels. Border dash right 2 pixels, border dash bottom 2 pixels, and border dash left 2 pixels, and then border dash style solid with a border dash color of red. That's what that is a shorthand of. This piece here, this one line, is a shorthand for all this. Right? So let's try that out and see if it works. Fresh. I'm just showing you this stuff, guys, so that you don't get freaked out. And you're like, God damn it, Tom, why doesn't it work?
Why does it work now?
Let's go back. And let's take these two styles here, these two pieces, and then take them away. And save and see what happens. So I'm going to just go back here, save, and go back here and refresh. So I took those away, it goes away. That's color and thickness of the border, right? And I'm going to undo, and I'm going to take away I'm going to leave my style, but take away my color, right? Save. Default color, black, right? Default color, blue. How come this default color is blue, blue, blue? It picks up the colors from, this, the color element, right? That's the inherited color. So even though I haven't specified a border color, it takes the nearest color that it finds, right? And of course the body color for my text, default body color is black, right? So it does black border, unless I have otherwise specified, right? How about if I do this? If I put the border color in there, border dash color, make it red, but we take out the style altogether. So kind of take the style out and save it. Does that do anything? No, because without a style, we don't know how it's going to re-render. The border is it's drawn by pixels, right? So we have to kind of talk about how the border is drawn, right? So if we look at it, I have to put in something. Let's put border style, and we'll put border style as dotted instead of solid, right? That's another border style, and that's refresh. Dotted style. Okay. Notice how there's a lot of padding over here, a lot of stuff going on here, right? That I haven't specified. I didn't specify what I want in here, and that's kind of interesting. Let's do a border. Let's put a border around our whole main, and I'll put a border around my header as well. Let's try that, right? So let's go back to my leave this border here, my red border, and around my main, I want to apply a class of red border, right? So there's my red border class, and in my header, I want to do the same thing, class of red border, right? So here's my classes. I'm applying them everywhere, and let's apply a class of red border to my h1 tag too. Here's my h1 tag. I'm going to put a class of red border, and I'll do the same thing down here to my h2 tag, class of red border. Okay, and so where else I can put it? Oh, my h4 tag, my class of red border. Yeah, how about this? How about I put it on my body tag too? So class, no, not here. I got to put it at the top, right? So I'll go to the class of red border. Just going crazy with red borders, man. Let's see what I get now. It's all going to be dotted too. Right? Bam. So, I mean, you can see that each one of these items I'm targeting, as an example, like for example, you see that the box goes around the entire thing. That's my body, right? You can see that the body, that there's an extra one up here that's collapsed. That's my header. There's nothing in my header, so it collapses it into like a line, right? That's what it does.
Yeah,
Welcome's not peeking out here anymore either. How come? I didn't do anything. I just added a border, right? And it has some default stuff going on, some default padding and everything else. Here's something else. Look at my lorem. I've got that around there. I got that around this, right, in here, and around my spans and everything. I got borders everywhere. By the way, guys, borders are a great way to troubleshoot your box model issues. All right, so if you use borders, you can turn it off or on, and you want to see how big your box is, your container. Borders are a good way to do it. Temporarily turn on a border, see what it looks like. You know the shape of your container. And then when you're done, take it away, right? So it's a way of debugging our layout a little bit as well. Okay, it's a good visual way to see it. Okay, let's take some of that away because that's just too annoying, right? So I don't need one around my entire body tag right now. So let's take that class out, and we'll take the class out of our header. But we'll put some other stuff back in there again later on if we need to do some troubleshooting. And we need to get into my H1. I'll leave it on the span for a second. I like it there. I'm going to leave it also on this paragraph and this. I'm going to take it off the H2 tag here. I don't care about the H2 tag having it. I'm going to leave it on the footer, but I'm going to take it away from the H4 tag. So all my main things should look like this. So I go back here and refresh. Now I get this. That's what you should have. And there's a reason why I'm doing this, so that way you can see different things here, right? Okay. So I've covered some way of doing this stuff, of targeting text. And if you notice, there's some otherwise. I can also say my font size is 100. I can target it with %. We've talked about this. I'm not going to cover rem so much because we don't use it as much anymore. Root M is what it stands for. I just want you to hear that you've heard rem as another way of another pixel or another unit that I'm using. Instead of M's and pixels and %, there's also rem, right, which is root M. I'm not going to use that very often. Font size can also be specified as extra, extra small to extra small. These are default font sizes that are built into your default browser styles, like default built-in font styles, sizes, right? So if I say extra, extra small for my font, it'll assign it a certain value, right? Same thing with my, if I go my font size larger or smaller than my root size, I can say larger than the root element size, but I have to specify the root element as something like a font size of 100. We talked about line height already, so you know what that is. It's like it's leading, right? And I've talked about how to set, you can set all these values all at once. So and you see how I did this breakout where I said font weight and font style. I can do both at once, right? By saying something like this. So font, I want to make it so that it's both italic and bold. For my first word, I can put italic and bold, and that does both styles together. That's a shorthand, right, for both italic and bold. There's shorthands in CSS. There's tons of shorthands for everything, and when you first look at it, you're like, what does it mean, right? You need to learn the long stuff, the long way of doing it first, and then understand what happens with the shorthand. We did our border top, right, bottom, and left, and style and color like this. The shorthand is this, right? The shorthand is this. We can also do this way. However, you should also be able to do something like this. So I want my top border to be 2 pixels. Let's make it solid again. My top border is 2 pixels. My right border is 5 pixels. My bottom border is 3 pixels, and my left border is 7 pixels. I don't know, some weird kind of border that I'm going to add in. And when I specify all these different values, right, and refresh my screen, I should have a different picture, but I don't. I get some weird, funky, not working kind of stuff. How come? Right? We had it before, but then I tried to do this, right, and then I have some weird things going on. How about if I do this? If I say, my top and bottom and my left and right are totally different, like this. Can I do that? And refresh, right? No, I can't. How about if I do this? And this is where my top, everything around is like this. Can I do that? Right? And let's see if that works. So I save this, and I go back to this, and I refresh. And that works. So it seems like I can't combine my borders the way I'm doing it with everything else right now, right? But now notice how everything is 2 pixels all the way around, right? And it's also a blue, but hold on, where's my italic? My blue and italic isn't being affected. It's just, sorry, my italic and bold isn't in here when I've specified font. How come? How come? Well, I took off normal, right? I took off normal. There's not normalized anymore. So I've taken away normal, but I can't do font, italic, and bold. And if I go back to the PowerPoint, it says, look, I can say font, and I can put normal, italic, or oblique to set the font style. And here's the other option, bold, bolder, or lighter. And if I can also put the font size, right, to kind of combine everything. It says type space followed by the desired font family or families in order of preference by separated by commas. I can do all that too, right? These are all the things that I can put into my font if I specify just the font property. So going down here, right? Instead of doing this like this, I can say not just those things, but I can also specify the font family of Arial, right? Like some kind of like Helvetica, you know. Can I do that, right? But notice how it's given me some kind of code hinting. One thing it tells me is that bold is 700. That's the default bold size, right? Let's go back to just say, how about if I just do font bold, but not italic for first words? Can I do that? So I want to make my font bold here. Doesn't come up with my font, right? But if I went back to doing it the way I was telling you to do it, which is font-style is bold for anything that has first word applied to it, right? And I go back to my code here and try it out. Oh man, what's going on? How come I'm getting it sometimes but not getting it other times? What's wrong with my system, guys? It's driving me insane. So what did I do different? Font style is not bold, that's why. It's font style is italic, and font weight is bold, right? Font weight bold, or I can specify 700, which is the same, because that's 700 at the amount. This is the old way we used to do it, and when we used to do print, the amount of ink we would put in into a particular style makes it bolder or less, and so that's almost like how much ink, how much pressure I'm putting in to this particular thing. It comes back from the old printer things, right? So font weight 700, and if I go back here and refresh, that works because that makes sense. Okay, but this, when I just put font and I try and combine stuff, it says, so the option is normal, italic, or oblique first, set font style, and then finally normal, bold, or bolder, right, or lighter. So maybe I have to do it in the order that it tells me to do it. How about that? So I go font, right, italic first, and then bold. Not bold first and then italic. Let's see if that works. Nope. Right. So let's think about how to do that. If I go to the font property, if I want to troubleshoot this problem that I'm having, right? And if I go to the font property, right? Font property, CSS, right? If I go back to schools, CSS schools, it shows me a couple things. I have italic, bold, and then you see that the style is working here. It says specify all the font properties in one declaration. Hey man, let's just copy it. Let's just copy one of these declarations. Italic, bold, 12 pixels over 30, and Georgia serif. Let's see if that kind of works. I'm going to copy this thing. I'm going to go back into my CSS. This is right from the internet, right? And I'll put it right in here like this. Bam. Let's see if that works, right? Because that's what I'm specifying for first word. I'm saving my stuff. I'm going back into here. I'm looking at this, and I refresh, and I'm getting it. How come it worked then, but it didn't work when I did it? Let's take a look. Because I'm not specifying all the stuff. If I look at my PowerPoint presentation, it says option, option, option. This one says type the size. Wherever it says type here, type the size, type the font, type the size, type the space, followed by whatever. I need to do that in this order. If I don't do that in this order, I can't use my shortcut. Okay, that's why, right? The options are extras that you can add in, but you have to follow the precept way of doing the shortcut. Okay, it's going back. So I could do it this way as well. So if that's true then, right, then I would specify, if I know the size, the font size, I could specify it here, italic, bold, and my first word is also 1.1 ems, right, with a Georgia serif, right? So let's do that. So let's italic, bold, with a font size of 1.2 ems, and space, with Georgia serif, right? Let's see if that matches up with what I got there. Make sure that I got that correctly from what I wrote. Yeah. Georgia, comma, serif. Yep. And let's see if that works with a semicolon, Tom. How about those? How about those apples? And then go back to here and refresh and see if I've got that same thing, right? So there it is. There's that whole style because I used the pattern. See, so one of the things as a takeaway for you guys today, right, is when we do shortcuts, there has to be, you have to do the shortcut in the specified pattern because you know what the pattern is? What's the pattern that I'm talking about here? If you're a programmer and I'm giving you parameters, right? What's the pattern that I'm talking about if I send parameters to a function? What am I talking about? I'm talking about a function signature, right? The function signature or the constructor signature has to have certain elements into it in a specific pattern sometimes for the constructor to fire, or else it won't work. It doesn't understand what you're trying to do, right? So the constructor of this particular shortcut font, right, requires italic, bold, the font size, or some kind of style, font weight, the size, and some kind of the font family, right? If I wanted to do it all at once.
Can you put the color in there as well, or is that?
Bold, small caps, that's the other way to do it, right? The line height, option is the line height. Font size is important. Line height I can put in there. And a space by the font families, but that's it. I can't put, if I try and put a color in there, it's probably gonna kick out again, right? So let's try that out. So if I go with a color of red, right? So it'll understand red. I want to try and put this in, but that means the font itself will be red. Let's see if that works. And of course, it's probably going to work now, right? No, it's not. Let me go back there. Actually, did that still take?
Yeah, well, with the color blue after the red, then it takes precedence as well.
See? Red, no blue, went to black. So because it doesn't understand red, that parameter is discarded, right? It's okay. It got everything it needed. This is how CSS works. It got everything it needed, but it didn't get the other stuff that I gave it because it doesn't understand it, right? Okay, let's keep going through here just to finish up the main. I want to hit the main stuff. We talked about setting color different ways last time with RGB and HSL, so I'm not going to cover that. So you can specify, instead of specifying my default colors, red, blue, black, and whatever, you can also specify hexadecimal values or with RGB in there as well, right? We talked about background color. You can make it transparent as well, or a color. If I want to make a transparent background or whatever, I can do that. And I can apply an image with background image like we did last time with the sky image that we used, right? So this is nothing new that we've kind of covered before. They just kind of cover it again, right, here in this part of the book, right? We can also move our background position, right, so it starts off in a different position as opposed to the top left corner of the screen, right? Word spacing you can also do, where you can actually put in word spacing and then whatever the length is, and that's kerning. The letters between, the spacing between words. So if I add, word spacing, that's the space between words. And if I put letter spacing, that's the spacing between letters. So I can make things more condensed or less condensed, from a control perspective. And that might come into play if I want to really stretch out a word from an effect perspective, like a letter spacing. Let's try letter spacing for a second. So I want to say back here, so when I say first word, I want to change, by the way, let's get back to the way it was before because I want to separate my styles. So font style is italic, and then font weight, we'll use 700 because that's equivalent to bold, right? And then we'll say letter spacing. We'll use letter spacing as, we'll use a pixel, 1 pixel. So not a point, but a whole pixel. Let's see if that works. Right? Because it says letters, and look what it says here, where length is the number of units, as in 4 ems or 5 pixels. So ems and pixels do work in this particular case. Let's check this out from a pixel perspective and see what it does for us when I refresh. So it kind of still a bit of it shows a pixel difference. Let's add some more pixels in there than just 1. Let's make it so instead of letter spacing as 1, we'll make it so the letter spacing is 5, and then see the difference when I refresh. So here I am, and then let's refresh that. So you see I can space out the letters in this thing. But let's say I want to target all my paragraphs and I want to make the spacing of the words 10 pixels. So I can do that too. So I can say all paragraphs, which I'd probably put up here, is all word spacing in my paragraphs. Word spacing is going to be at least 10 pixels. That's kind of weird. But let's just put it so from an effect perspective, it's going to be massive, right? It's going to make our paragraphs balloon, right? There's 10 pixels. So it's kind of expanded our words. So you have control of the way the spacing is of your letters and your words, and that's really kind of an important thing to do, right? Especially from what type of effect you want. Here's one, text indent. I want to add my first word, because my first word of a paragraph indents. I want to indent my thing by, let's say, a number of units, right? Any unit I want. I'm going to add in 3 M's, right, of space indenting, right? So I want to kind of, in my paragraph, by my first word, I want my, indenting, so text indent, right? I want to make it so that it's 5 M's, right? And here's a question for you. Should you mix pixels and M's and percentages? Should I mix them? Anyone have a recommendation for me?
Because it's sloppy.
It's very sloppy, right? So what did I do? I said my first word, I text indent to 5 M's, right? First word. But then how come, here's something, how come my my paragraph style kicked in, right? Let me go back here. Here's my paragraph style. If I go back to this over here, my paragraph says I've added first word, right? I added a text indent of 5 M's, but I only had my text indent work here, but not here or here, right? I'll tell you why. All this stuff is happening to me, by the way. I've got other styles that are affecting me. What are the styles that are affecting me all the time that you've been seeing through this whole time? My default browser styles. If I took that away, would it work here in my paragraphs? It would kind of make my paragraphs funny, right?
No, it's not working.
It won't, right? But how come it doesn't work here, right? What about if I said this? What about if I said my text indent, right? And it says add indents. How much space should precede the first line of a paragraph, right? The first line of a paragraph. I'm trying to apply it, this thing. My first word, I'm trying to apply it to a span tag. That's not a paragraph tag, but this one is, right? So it works here, but not here. Because I'm applying it to the span tag, not the paragraph, right? So text indent should be applied to the paragraph. So let me take that away. Okay, we're almost done, and I want to go back to the other stuff. So I just want to make sure I copied everything in. Align text, if I want to align it right or left, like for example, if I want to align my text to the right, it's going to align right in its container, right? So what happens if I go back to my style here? If I align my H2 tag, right, to the right. So let's make a new style. Let's make a new style here. We're going to call this thing right, right? And maybe we'll call it, just to be specific, text-right. I want to make a text right style, and I want to put in something that says text align right, right? So I want to text align right, and I want to apply it, to my H1 tag, right? So I want to say class is equal to text-right. So what's going to happen to what do you think is going to happen to my H1 tag with my text-right class applied to it? Anybody? Come on, guys. I need more people than just our friend in the corner there to answer all the questions, right? What's going to happen with my text right? Here's my text right class, and I'm not walking away from the podium. You're not going to hear me anymore on the video. My text right class, what's going to happen to my H1? What's going to happen? Where is it going to go? Let's look before I refresh. I saved it. Where is it going to go? If I've got my H1 tag here. Where is this? Over here?
Yeah.
How come over there? Let me talk about that more specifically, right? So let's go back to my thing here, and let me just refresh and see what happens to it. It went over here, right? How come it went over here and it didn't stop here? It's not the page it's going to the right side of, because look, the page is over here, and there's a bit of a space between the page and the gray border here, right? It stopped at the gray border. What's the gray border? The main, right? Because the main, and this is the thing to understand here, this thing, the size, the width of my H1 tag is the whole width right now. I haven't specified. It's the whole width of my of its parent class, which is the main. The main container is the whole width right now of the screen. I haven't specified anything else, so it spans the whole thing. And to test this, I could put in a red border in here to test it out. This is my test to do this, right? Here's my red border, right? And if I refresh, if I go back and refresh to see the border, you can see that the border, this is my container for my H1 tag, right? This whole container right here. So you see it's going to go to the right side of the container that it's inside, right? It's inside of my H1 tag. And the H1 tag is inside of my container, which is the main, right? Okay, so let's say I want to specify a width. I want to specify a width property to my container. Like example, I want my container, my H1, to have a 50% width. So 50% of my of the screen. What does that mean? Or maybe I want to specify a specific number, like pixels or ems. Let's try that. So I'm going to go here and say, you know what? My container, which is my, with anything that has a text right? I also want to make it so that, this is kind of funky. Actually, I'll make it a separate class to make it more effective and more realistic, right? I'm going to say that my, I'll call this thing width dash 300, right? So 300 width, basically. Width 300 is going to be a width of 300 pixels, right? And I'm going to apply my width 300 to my H1 class as well. So I'm going to say width dash 300. Let's see what that does when I apply this thing, if I refresh, right? See how the width of my object, I can specify the width of my container. The width of my container for my welcome, right, of my H1 tag, right, is now 300 pixels. But I've changed the text alignment of my welcome to the right, right? It doesn't appear, if I took up the borders, it wouldn't appear that it's over, you know, the effect that I want may not be the effect that I'm getting. If I want it to be to the other side of the page, I have to make sure that the width of my H1 container is all the way over here, right? Remember that each tag, going back, review, each tag is really a container. It's a box. That's all it is. That's why when we're talking about the box model, I'm talking about the box model here with you without talking about the box model. I'm trying to get you to understand that each one of these things, each one of these objects here is a container. That's all it is. And I can specify the width and height of the container. So if that's true, then I can specify the height of my H1, right, by applying another class. Let's make another class. What do you think I should call it? Let's make it the height also 300, right? How would I do that? Well, let's make a new class that I'm going to call height 300, right? Height 300, and I'm going to make it so that the height of whatever thing I apply to is going to have 300 pixels. That's kind of weird. But let's do it anyway. And I'll apply it to this H1 tag, this silly H1 tag we're making. So let's say height dash 300, right? And if I go back and I refresh, I get this, right? 300. And it looks like a square, right? 300 by 300. And now if you notice my width, right, is 300 by 300. I applied all these different classes to it. So this class and this class, they all get applied in order, right? Plus a red border, plus text align right, right? Okay, let's make another one we'll call another class. And you see, hopefully you see what I'm doing here. We'll call this text center, right? We'll make our own classes. Text center then is going to be text align center, right? That's what it's going to do. And it's going to align my text in the center of my of the top part of my screen, right? So let's try that out. So I'm going to apply, instead of text right, I'm going to change this to text center, right? And then let's see what that does. Let's see what effect that has. I'm going to refresh. There it is. So it's the center of my box, which is an H1 tag actually. That's the whole H1 tag, right? Center of my box is centered. How about if I want it in here? Is that possible? Right? How do I move it so that this is in here in the middle of my H1 tag? Is that a possibility? Let's see if we can get that done with what we're doing here. So this is aligning text right or left or justify. That's another way we can do it, right? I can change the case. So if I want to capitalize it, I can say capitalize, right? Text transform, capitalize. Let's try that out too. So we're going to make this called, we're going to call it uppercase. We're going to make a class called uppercase, right? So class uppercase, right? And uppercase is going to be text transform to uppercase, right? That's what it's going to do. And I'm going to apply this to my text as well. So it's going to be all uppercase now. So I'm going to say uppercase, right? And then I'm going to go in here and refresh and see what I get, right? So here's all uppercase letters. I can go small caps. I can remove small caps. Let me go to decorating text. This is an important one. I can't miss this one. I wanted to make sure I got everything. And this is one. Text decoration. I can choose whatever I want, underline or overline or whatever. And there's also text decoration none. This is really important when it comes to links. Okay, I'm making my navigation. You know, links have a text decoration of an underline that's a default, right? Every link has a text decoration underline. And if I want to take that text decoration away, I can just say text decoration none. But if I want to add an underline to something, I can add a text decoration. So let's add that in. So I'm going to go back to my files, and over here I'm going to add another class called underline. I'm being really silly here when I do this, but just to show you the power of CSS, right? I'm going to say text-decoration underline, right? So here's my text decoration underline, and I'm going to call this thing, I'm going to add the underline class that I just created to my h1 tag. Let's go back to my screen and see what I get, right? And I get an underline in my text, right? So I'm having lots of control here. I'm adding one class on top of another class to get a compound style, right? A compound style for my element. And if I do an inspect element here by right-clicking and doing inspect element, you can see the styles that I'm going to get on the right. The compound styles I'm getting. These are all the styles, right? That are applying. Each of these styles are adding formatting to my to this element here, right? And if I look at computed, right? You can see that these are all the things that I'm doing with my computed styles. These are all the stuff that I'm doing. Line height of 21.12 pixels. My text line is center. My text decoration is underline. My text transform is uppercase. All these things are happening all at once. So it's a neat thing to do when it comes to debugging your CSS. You're smiling. You like it or you don't like it? Making you laugh. Okay, so let's go back here. And then, of course, there's the white space property we can add in or avoid. Okay, I want to hit the other PowerPoint. I've kind of hit it already without telling you that I'm hitting it, because what I want to do is I want to kind of hit these most important points that I'm talking about here today. And that's why I really don't have a lab. I don't have time for one today. That's not the one I wanted. By the way, these PowerPoints are up online on Blackboard, right? One thing I want to go to is this little funky picture here. This is what I've been working with the whole time, right? Here's our box model, and this comes right out of the PowerPoint, right? And we're going to get back to this. I'm not going to just hit this one time. It's not going to be the last time you're going to see this picture or this PowerPoint. I'm going to go to it again. So I want you to think about it like this. You always start off at the outside border, right? It's like this. My margin, then there's a border, then there's a padding, and then there's a content, right? Right? So margin, border, padding, content. That's how it goes. For every element that's out there, every single element, doesn't matter what it is, because every element we have is a container. So every element has all of these things: margin, border, padding, and content. Every single element, right? So if I want to specify things like a margin or a border, I can do that for every element. And the margin is the space. Margin is defined as the space between the border and the next element. All right? And the border is defined as what we draw between the padding and the margin. That's what the border is around the object. It's a border around the object. It could be like 1 pixel, 10 pixels, solid, whatever. And these are different. These are the different. If you notice, the different properties you can hit with this stuff here, right? Padding is the stuff that's inside the border between the content and the border is the padding, right? That's what it is. And then you have your width and height properties, like we saw, width and height. Okay, so that means that, and there's got to be a really good mnemonic for this one, right? And there's margin, border, padding, content, right? Margin, border, padding, content. So let's try this out. Let's go into our back to our CSS and go back up to the body and specify some stuff. I want to say, you know what, my body tag, I want it to have some standard stuff, some standard padding, if you will. Should I do it as part of the body? And this is where I ask you these questions, right? As a default style, or should I do it somewhere else? And my recommendation to is avoid doing it at the body as much as possible, unless it's going to be something that's going to reset. Like for example, I want to have my margin, right, and the body, all my margin. Remember, I can use the clock, right? Whenever I specify a shortcut, going back to my PowerPoint, I can use the clock for the shortcut, right? So top, right, bottom, left as my shortcuts, right? So if I go back to my to here, right, I can say, well, I want my margins all the way around to be 0, right, or just 0, the average, the number is 0. I want my padding also to be 0. I want to 0 that out, right, for my margin and my padding, right? And the reason why I want that is because if I go back to my to this, it's going to do this. It's going to kind of kill this one and this one. See how it does that? So my margin and my padding have just killed. So now my if you notice, my main has taken up the entire space of my whole screen, right? Which is a little better. If I want to specify that my main, right, my main itself has a margin around it, and this is the way to go, of let's say 15 pixels or 20 pixels around everything, I can do it like this. I can go back to my code, and I can target my main, right, which is here, and I can add in a margin, right, so the space around the object, all right, of 20 pixels. 20 pixels. That's my margin around the object, right? And if I go back to see what the effect has, it's this. It actually adds an even margin around my entire container of 20 pixels, right? How about this? This is my H1 tag, right? And if you notice here, I need some padding. Padding is the space inside between my border, the border of my object, and my content. I want to add a padding of 10 pixels all the way around my main. So I go back. So I go back here, and I want to add a padding there. So I go to my main, and instead of margin of 20 all the way around, I want to have a padding also of 20 all the way around, right? So my margin and padding of 20. Let's see what that does. And then if you notice now, my welcome is pushed down. It's not outside of my main anymore, and that's a pretty good margin. That's a pretty good padding. But I've got some other padding going on. How come I don't have just 20 here? Anybody? Why don't I just have 20 padding here? Because I also have my styles that come from my H1 tag, right? So if I want my H1 tag only to have a margin of 10, this is where you have one container that affects the other container, because each one can have margin, padding, and border, every one of them, right? And they're all cumulative, by the way. Don't think that if I specify a width of 300 pixels that I only get 300 pixels, ever. I get 300 pixels, plus I get the margin, plus I get the padding, plus I get the border. So if I want something to be exactly 300 pixels, I have to take all those other things into account, right? Because as an example, this is 300 pixels, this thing here, 300 pixels by 300 pixels, plus I have a border, right, of 2 pixels. So that's 302 pixels. Plus 2 pixels on one side plus 2 pixels on the other side. That's 304 pixels, right? 2 pixels on one side plus 2 pixels on the other side. So my width is 304, right? It adds. It's not all contained in the 300, right? It would be nice, and there's a command to make that happen, right? But it's not that way. So let's take away some of this stuff. Let's say all H1 tags, all H tags have, instead of a padding of whatever they gave us or a margin, we're going to reduce the H1 tag's margin to 0. Let's zero that out. So I'm going to go back to here and say all H tags have a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. What effect would that have? It's going to make our document look way different. If I refresh it, now you see that there's no margin or padding for our H1 tag. So where am I getting this padding here now if there's no padding from our H1 tag? So I'm getting it from my paragraph tag. My paragraph has a natural padding that looks like around 10 pixels or 20 pixels. But there's a padding here, which is my H1 tag. I don't have any margin there. And there's a margin here that's around my paragraph tag. So let's reduce that to 0 too, just to see how that works. So here's my paragraph tag. I'm targeting my paragraph tag, and I'm going to say, you know what, my margin is also going to be 0 for my paragraph tag. Let's see what that does. And refresh. Right. So you see how it's abutting everything now, right? And now I can add in my own stuff. I can say, well, you know, this is a little bit too much for me. I want to reduce that by half. So I want to say my inside my padding for inside of my my main, I want my padding to be only 5 pixels or 10 pixels as an example. So I'm going to go back. Notice what I'm doing. Content, padding, border, margin. Each of my objects has that, and it adds to the size of my objects. So that's how CSS gets crazy. People don't understand how it works because one object affects the other one, and it's all compound, right? It all layers like that to give yourself the perfect formatting. Any questions around the box model? That we've been talking about it in a very sly way. I've been telling you about it without telling you about it. And like I said, we're not going to leave this alone. We're going to talk about this again next week, all right? This box model stuff. I just wanted to introduce it to you today along with everything else because I think it's a good segue into what you're going to be given. I'm going to give you another assignment next week, right? And when you get that assignment, it's going to give you more stuff for you to do. So that's it for me this week. Really, we talked about the text formatting and a bit of the box model, and I'm going to hit the rest of the box model next week. Any questions at all before we go? Hopefully I'll have your marks up by next week too. I'd like to try and get that done. That's a big thing on me. All right? All right, take care.